3,000 years ago, a woman undertook a journey that changed the economy of the ancient world. She traveled 2,000 kilometers through the desert, risking her life, throne, and the reputation of her kingdom. Her meeting with a powerful king in Jerusalem lasted weeks, but the consequences of these negotiations were felt for centuries. When she returned home, she brought back neither peace with a neighbor nor a military alliance. She brought something far more valuable, a contract that transformed a tiny kingdom at the edge of the known world into the center of a trading empire through which flowed the riches of 3 continents. Her name was Balkis, the Queen of Sheba. If you find these stories interesting, please like this video so such content appears more often. And now, let's explore how one decision turned a small kingdom into the trading hub of 3 continents. Imagine a caravan of 300 camels moving through a lifeless desert under the scorching sun. Each animal carries precious cargo on its back: frankincense and myrrh, aromatics worth their weight in gold. This caravan travels for 3 months through sand, mountains, and waterless plains, covering more than 2,000 kilometers from the southern tip of the Arabian Peninsula to Jerusalem. A single such cargo is worth an entire fortune, enough to support a small city for a year. At the head of this caravan is a woman, a queen, the ruler of the wealthiest kingdom in the ancient world, embarking on a dangerous journey to change her country's fate. Her name is Balkis, the Queen of Sheba. Her decision will launch a trading empire that will control the wealth of 3 continents for 1,000 years. This is the story of how one woman turned geography into destiny, plants into the currency of empires, and created an economic system that survived the fall of kingdoms and the change of civilizations. At the southern tip of the Arabian Peninsula, where mountain ranges meet the Indian Ocean, nature created a unique place. Here, monsoon rains fall twice a year, the rarest phenomenon in all of Arabia. Water flows down from the mountains, nourishes the valleys, makes the land fertile. And here grow trees from whose bark incisions oozes fragrant resin. When it hardens, it transforms into solid drops of golden and silvery color, frankincense and myrrh, substances without which no religious ritual of the ancient world, no royal burial, no medical procedure in the temples of Egypt, Babylon, or Greece could take place. These plants grew nowhere else on the planet, only here in the mountains of southern Arabia, a monopoly granted by nature itself. But when Balkis inherited the throne around 950 BCE, a monopoly on aromatics was no longer enough. The world was changing. Egypt was strengthening trade ties with its northern neighbors. Assyrian merchants were expanding their networks. Phoenician sailors were beginning to dominate the Mediterranean. Caravans with frankincense and myrrh still traveled north, but the route was dangerous, unstable, dependent on the whims of dozens of tribal chieftains. Each section of the route was controlled by different tribes. Each demanded payment. Each could block the road at any moment. The young queen understood. Her kingdom sat on a gold mine. But without guaranteed access to markets, this gold was useless. and Balkis made a decision that seemed like madness. She herself would go north. Not an ambassador, not a merchant, not a military commander. The Queen would personally lead a caravan through 2,000 kilometers of desert. This was a colossal risk. 3 months of travel through lands where a woman ruler was an unprecedented phenomenon. The danger of attack, disease, betrayal by her own entourage. But Balkis understood. Only the personal presence of the monarch would make this a true state visit, not just another trade embassy. Only she herself could negotiate as an equal with Solomon. Only her presence would transform a deal into an alliance. The caravan was grandiose. Hundreds of camels loaded with aromatics, the finest frankincense, the rarest myrrh, aromatic oils. Gold, ingots, jewelry, works of local craftsmen. Precious stones from India and Africa, goods that passed through southern ports into the hands of her merchants. This was not merely a demonstration of wealth. This was a demonstration of strategic importance. Each item in this caravan said, "We control the flow of goods from the south, from the east, from across the sea. An alliance with us provides access to all these riches." Balkis was not carrying gifts. She was carrying arguments. The meeting with Solomon entered history not as a romantic tale, but as a model of diplomatic mastery. Two monarchs, each at the height of power, each controlling a critically important segment of the trade network. Solomon needed stable supplies of aromatics for his temple, exotic goods to demonstrate wealth, an ally in the south who could control the sea routes of the Red Sea. Balkis needed guarantees of security for caravans in the north, access to Mediterranean markets, political support against neighboring kingdoms coveting her lands. Negotiations lasted not days, weeks. Every detail of the future trade agreement was discussed: tariffs, caravan route protection, resolution of conflicts between merchants, military mutual assistance. When Balkis returned home, she brought back neither gold nor gifts. She brought back a treaty that changed the economy of the entire region. Now, her caravans received official protection along the entire route to the Mediterranean Sea. Solomon's merchants received exclusive access to southern goods at fixed prices. Both sides guaranteed each other military support in case of attack by third parties. But most importantly, a precedent was created. Trade ceased to be the business of individual merchants. It became the business of states. After her return, Balkis launched a large-scale program. Old caravan routes were formalized, transformed into state infrastructure. Every 30 to 40 kilometers, fortified stations were built with water, animal feed, and warehouses. These stations were guarded by royal troops. For their use, caravans paid a fixed toll. Tribes through whose lands the routes passed received a share of this toll in exchange for a commitment not to attack caravans. The system transformed chaotic trade into a predictable mechanism. Caravans began running on schedule. Merchants could plan profits. The royal treasury filled with stable revenues. But Balkis did not stop with frankincense. She understood her kingdom stood not merely on a deposit of aromatic resins. It stood at the crossroads of worlds. On one side, Africa, from where ships came with gold, ivory, rare animals. On the other, India, source of spices, precious stones, fabrics. To the northeast, Mesopotamia. To the west, Egypt and the Mediterranean. All these regions craved each other's goods, but direct trade between them hardly existed. Distances were enormous, routes dangerous, linguistic and cultural barriers insurmountable. A middleman was needed, and Balkis transformed her kingdom into that middleman. Southern ports were expanded and fortified. Foreign merchants were invited, Indian, African, Egyptian. They were guaranteed security, fair justice, property protection. In port cities, entire quarters of foreigners arose, speaking dozens of languages. Goods from ships were transferred to caravans and sent north. Northern goods, Mediterranean wine, Egyptian glass, Syrian fabrics, went south, loaded onto ships, departed for India and Africa. Balkis's kingdom became a giant transshipment point where trade flows from 3 continents met. And from each transaction, the royal treasury received a percentage. Tariffs on caravans, port fees, taxes on foreign merchants, payment for protection, income from royal monopolies on particularly valuable goods. Wealth flowed like a river. The capital transformed into one of the greatest cities of the ancient world. The population reached 40,000 people, an enormous figure for those times. In temples, accumulated treasures, golden statues, precious stones, tons of aromatics. Inscriptions on stone stelae listed victories, trade expeditions, the size of captured spoils. Balkis's kingdom was at the peak of its power. But most remarkably, she created a system that outlived her. Balkis ruled for about 40 years, until the end of the 10th century BCE. After her death, the throne passed to her descendants. The dynasty continued. The trade system continued to function. Caravans traveled the same routes she had laid out. Treaties she had concluded were observed for decades. Infrastructure she had built worked for centuries. This was not the personal achievement of one ruler. This was a transformation of the model, from chaotic trade to organized state system. And this system proved incredibly resilient. When 300 years later, Solomon's northern kingdom broke apart, trade did not cease. Caravans found new partners. When neighboring kingdoms began wars, trying to seize control of trade routes, Balkis's kingdom fought back, using wealth to hire armies, fortify cities, bribe enemies. The main thing remained unshakable. The dam continued to irrigate fields, ports continued to receive ships, caravans continued to go north. Balkis laid down a principle that would become the foundation of survival for millennia to come. Adaptation is more important than strength. When 5 centuries after her death, Greek merchants opened direct sea routes to India, bypassing Arabia, it seemed the monopoly would collapse. Income from caravan trade indeed fell. But instead of collapse, the kingdom transformed. The focus shifted to premium goods, the highest quality frankincense, select spices, goods for religious rituals where authenticity was important. In parallel, agriculture developed. The dam, built in the time of Balkis's predecessors, irrigated tens of thousands of hectares, yielding several harvests a year. grain and date exports became a new source of income. When the Romans came and established control over the Mediterranean, the southern kingdom did not fight them. It traded. The Roman Empire consumed a colossal amount of aromatics for temples, burials, medicine, perfumery. Southern merchants supplied all of this, receiving in return gold, glass, wine. The trade balance was so favorable for the south that Roman authors complained about the outflow of gold to Arabia. But they could not stop the trade. Demand was too great. When in the 4th century, CE Christianity came to the region, southern kingdoms adopted the new religion. Magnificent churches were built, decorated with marble and mosaics. Religious conflicts tore the country apart. Foreign armies invaded, trying to establish control. But even in the chaos of wars, trade continued. Ports operated. Caravans traveled. Because Christians, pagans, and later Muslims all needed aromatics, spices, goods from the East. When in the 7th century, Islam united Arabia, southern lands entered the new state almost voluntarily. The new religion forbade usury but encouraged trade. Muslim merchants created a trade network from Spain to China. And again, southern ports found themselves at the center of this network. Through them passed Indian spices, Chinese silk, African gold. Arab sailors mastered monsoon navigation, built fast ships crossing the ocean in weeks. The principle laid down by Balkis, control over flows, not overproduction, worked again. Even when, in the 11th century, the ancient dam collapsed, having stood for 1,500 years, and flourishing valleys turned into desert, this did not kill the civilization. Coastal areas continued to prosper. The main port remained a key trade hub. When 5 centuries later, the Turks came, establishing control over the Red Sea, they did not destroy the trade system. They integrated into it, collecting tariffs from ships coming from India. When Europeans sailed around Africa and opened a direct route to India, it was a blow, but not a fatal one. A new commodity appeared: coffee, grown in mountain terraces. What began as a local drink of monks turned into global export. Coffee beans from southern Arabia became as valuable as frankincense once was. The system created by Balkis worked on one principle: use what geography gives you, adapt to changes, control flows. When caravans lost significance, switch to sea. When one commodity cheapens, find another. When new rulers come, trade with them. Don't fight for control over production. Control the movement of goods. Be a node, a crossroads, a middleman. This brings less glory than conquests, but it ensures survival. Even now, when the country is torn by war, when ancient cities lie in ruins, when the world has forgotten this land, something indestructible survives. In mountain valleys, frankincense and myrrh trees still grow. Peasants cultivate terraced fields built 2,000 years ago. Ancient architecture is preserved, surviving bombardments. People keep manuscripts that have survived dozens of wars. This is neither stubbornness nor coincidence. This is a survival mechanism developed over millennia. Balkis, who set out with a caravan through the desert 3,000 years ago, understood the main thing. Strength lies not in possessing resources, but in the ability to manage them. Mountains, rains, plants, these are tools. True power lies in the ability to transform them into a system. In the ability to negotiate, trade, adapt. Her kingdom disappeared. Her capital is buried under sand. her dam is destroyed, but the principle she embodied lives on to this day. Even when, in the 11th century, the ancient dam collapsed, having stood for 1,500 years, and flourishing valleys turned into desert, this did not kill the civilization. Coastal areas continued to prosper. The main port remained a key trade hub. When 5 centuries later, the Turks came, establishing control over the Red Sea, they did not destroy the trade system. They integrated into it, collecting tariffs from ships coming from India. When Europeans sailed around Africa and opened a direct route to India, it was a blow, but not a fatal one. A new commodity appeared: coffee, grown in mountain terraces. What began as a local drink of monks turned into global export. Coffee beans from southern Arabia became as valuable as frankincense once was. The system created by Balkis worked on one principle: use what geography gives you, adapt to changes, control flows. When caravans lost significance, switch to sea. When one commodity cheapens, find another. When new rulers come, trade with them. Don't fight for control over production. Control the movement of goods. Be a node, a crossroads, a middleman. This brings less glory than conquests, but it ensures survival. Even now, when the country is torn by war, when ancient cities lie in ruins, when the world has forgotten this land, something indestructible survives. In mountain valleys, frankincense and myrrh trees still grow. Peasants cultivate terraced fields built 2,000 years ago. Ancient architecture is preserved, surviving bombardments. People keep manuscripts that have survived dozens of wars. This is neither stubbornness nor coincidence. This is a survival mechanism developed over millennia. Balkis, who set out with a caravan through the desert 3,000 years ago, understood the main thing. Strength lies not in possessing resources, but in the ability to manage them. Mountains, rains, plants, these are tools. True power lies in the ability to transform them into a system. In the ability to negotiate, trade, adapt. Her kingdom disappeared. Her capital is buried under sand. Her dam is destroyed. But the principle she embodied lives on to this day. She was a woman in a world where power belonged to men. A ruler of a small kingdom in a world where empires dominated. But she did what many great conquerors failed to do: created a system that survived centuries. Not through armies, not through conquests, not through violence. Through trade, through diplomacy, through understanding that control over movement is more important than control over territory. Now her land is experiencing perhaps the darkest period of its history. But it has survived worse. Empires came and went. Religions replaced each other. Trade routes shifted. Dams collapsed. But the land remained. People remained. And each time a way was found to survive, adapt, continue. Because Balkis 3,000 years ago laid down not just a trade system, she laid down a philosophy of survival. Don't resist changes, use them. Don't cling to the old, seek the new. Don't fight when you can negotiate. Don't own when you can control the flow. Her caravan has long dissolved in the sands of time. But the road it laid remains alive to this day. And as long as trade exists, as long as people need goods from the other end of the world, as long as geography matters, the principle of the Queen of Sheba will work. Because she understood the main thing. Empires are built on force and collapse from force. Trade networks are built on mutual benefit and survive as long as that benefit exists. Balkis chose not the glory of a conqueror, she chose the immortality of a system. And that system has survived millennia. And now that you've heard the rest of this story, the main question arises: what was the true strength of this civilization? Wealth, position, or the ability to change the rules of the game in time? Share your thoughts in the comments.